Welcome, friends, to Breakfast in the Ruins, a Michael Moorcock flavoured podcast. On this show, Miles is back as we tackle one of the last of Mike's 60s SF outings, The Distant Sons. Originally serialised in the Illustrated Weekly of India in 1969, it was eventually published in the UK by Unicorn in 1975 and then later by New English Library, credited to Michael Moorcock and Philip James, the pseudonym of Moorcock's old friend and collaborator, James Cawthorn. Cawthorn is probably best known to genre fans as the artist whose version of Elric became, for many readers, the definitive Elric. They'd been friends since Moorcock's earliest days in fandom, bonding over their shared love of Edgar Rice Burroughs. Cawthorn illustrated Moorcock's early publications, helped shape the visual conception of Elric, produced covers and interior art for his books, and later collaborated with him not only on The Distant Sons, but also the published graphic adaptations of the History of the Runestaff, the never-published adaptation of Stormbringer, the screenplay for The Land That Time Forgot, and Fantasy, the 100 Best Books. The Distant Sons is a particularly odd product of that friendship, a mixture of Moorcock's darker-tinged 60s SF and a big, old-fashioned space adventure. That makes it particularly interesting for us because Moorcock, while simultaneously one of the great deconstructionists of pulp adventure, was also one of its greatest lovers and proponents, and Cawthorn was a great collaborator. His artistic career was rooted in all those traditions Moorcock loved: Burroughs, sword and planet fiction, comics, and pulp adventure, and his visual flair is firmly embedded in the eternal champion mythology, particularly with Elric. So, charge your ray guns, prepare your best dance fever breeks, and join us as we head off into one of the stranger corners of Moorcock's multiverse in The Distant Sons. There he is. Yeah. People will be wondering what we're. Yeah, dream. Yeah. People were wondering what we're in at. But I just saw your copy of the book that we're about to talk about, and I have exactly the same copy, but we shall talk about that shortly. And I have my Garth Marenghi bookmark poking out of my copy of this book, and you sent me a photograph of your bookmark earlier.
Taskmaster, yeah. You know, truly, you're a man of taste and literary connoisseurship.
Yeah. Welcome back, Miles. We're back at Derry Toms, and Miles is here, everybody. Welcome back, Miles. Lovely to have you back as ever.
As always, glad to be back.
What's going on the Casual Trek podcast? What have you been talking about?
The next episode up, we are talking about actors who have been in both Star Trek and Twin Peaks. But we recorded a few episodes in advance because it's the summer, and I want to take some semblance of summer holes. Yeah. So we did some short episodes, one of which Charlie finally watched The Black Hole, the great post-Star Wars attempt by Disney to get some of that Star Wars money, and the magnificent failure of a film that is, even though I legitimately think that it's bloody brilliant.
I ironically love The Black Hole. I saw it at cinema as a kid. It blew my mind. I had my Maximilian and Vincent model kits.
Nice.
Absolutely incredible. Seeing Anthony Perkins get rotary knifed through a book for a kid aged, I don't know, how old was I when, what year did The Black Hole come out? 1980?
1980, like 79?
79, so I'll have been 7 or 8. Yeah, I'll be 7 or 8. And that was, I found it absolutely mind-blowing. And in all honesty, we watched it again probably last year or the year before. When we were on our massive Alan Dean Foster kick, I picked up the novelisation, which I still haven't read. The film popped up somewhere, so we watched it, and I was blown away by how well it stood up over the years. Some of the model work, the beautiful matte paintings, the score. My God, the score.
I have the score somewhere on vinyl.
Yeah. Great cast as well.
Yeah. I mean, you got Ernest Borgnine, you've got Maximilian Schnell playing the villain, and he is utterly psychotic.
Yeah.
And Anthony Perkins, for once, not playing utterly psychotic.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, you know, as much as I love Psycho, it's probably my favorite film. It is always a shame that Anthony Perkins did kind of get a bit typecast afterwards.
I think he had quite a lot of health and mental health problems as well, didn't he, on the back of some of this stuff. So, but yeah, fascinating bloke. I'm a huge fan of Psycho too. And weirdly, and I know a lot of people diss it, I really like Psycho 3 as well.
I still haven't seen Psycho 3.
Mm.
I didn't see Psycho 2 for the longest time because, like, Psycho is legitimately my favorite film of all time.
Yeah.
Peeping Tom is the better film, but Psycho is my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah.
And so part of me was like, nope, I don't want it to be ruined by like a lackluster sequel. So it took me about 20 years to finally get around to it.
Yeah.
And when I did, yeah, it's actually a very good film. Nice little twist, and Anthony Perkins is great on it. Even though, you know, part of you is going, yeah, he's definitely here for, he's originally coming in, you know, clearly for the paycheck. Yeah. It's also a lot better than Robert Bloch's Psycho 2, which is incredibly mean-spirited.
Oh, I've never read it. I've never read the original either.
Psycho the novel is surprisingly good. I swear there is an attempted misdirect because Robert Bloch was one of those Lovecraft, you know, circle of writers. Yeah. So there's the implication, Norman has the belief that he brought his mother back from the dead using arcane art. So I'm wondering if, like, originally it's, you know, Robert Bloch's going, okay, people know I'm usually doing like the Lovecraft stuff. Yeah. So what if I make it look like Norman brought back his mother from the dead using like the Necronomicon or something. And then it turns out, oh no, it's just he's mad and he's dressing up and thinking he's his mother.
I'm going to have to read it. I've got quite a few Robert Bloch books that I've never read. I think I've got, is it? No, it's not. I can't remember whether Firebug is Robert Bloch or Peter Cave because they're next to each other on the show. I can't fucking remember. Anyway, but I've got loads of Robert Bloch that I really need to read, including a book of his short stories. But, the to-read pile just keeps on growing. It just keeps on growing, and there's nothing I can do about it. Right, before we kick in, I'm going to... It's 7:15 in the evening here in Bradford. I've been a good lad all day, so I think I deserve a beer. So I'm going to have a Rudgate Deep Red Mild.
Ooh, that does sound nice.
Yeah, I'm just going to pop that up. And so, what are we here to do today, Miles?
Well, we are here finally after God knows how many years on this podcast. You are finally approaching a second Jerry Cornelius book. Unfortunately, you're not doing A Cure for Cancer, and it's less Jerry Cornelius English Assassin and more The Distant Sons, where it's Jerry Cornelius Pilot of the Future.
Yes, I think it's JINO. I think it's Jerry in name only. Yeah, in all honesty. Yeah, this is definitely a JINO novel. So, yes, we're talking about The Distant Sons, and we both have the same edition here, I think, the New English Library edition.
Yep.
Which is got quite an attractive cover, actually. I quite like that painted on the cover.
UK price of £2.99 and Australian price of $10.95.
Yeah, £2 and 99 earth pence. So this is an unusual story, really, because it's commissioned in 1968 by the Illustrated Times of India to write an SF serial, 18-parter. So he collaborates with James Cawthorn under the assumed guise of Philip James. I had a quick look to see what John and Maureen Davies' excellent Murkography website says about it. And it says, Jerry Cornelius, the ambiguous, amoral, androgynous English assassin, or not, as the case may be. Although featuring Cornelius et al., The Distant Sons has no link as such with that series. Its first appearance was the 18-part weekly serialisation of the entire novel in the Illustrated Weekly of India in 1969, the book itself being published in March 1975. Written in collaboration with and illustrated by James Cawthorn, although the series was credited to Moorcock alone, who, inverted commas, was approached by the London editor who told me he and his colleagues in the firm were very concerned about the slowness of Indian society's acceptance of practical science and its benefits. He asked me if I would be interested in writing a serial for the weekly whose huge audience was unfamiliar with science fiction as a moral or didactic medium. The use of various characters from the Cornelius stories was inspired by the notion of putting the same characters in thoroughly different periods and backgrounds and seeing what happened. I've got a nit to pick there. I don't think these are the same characters. I think these are just the names.
Just names. For one thing, Catherine is also in this, but at no point does he make inference that she's actually his sister.
No, she's just his doting wife. She is not his sibling, which we can all heave a sigh of relief about. Fortunately. Yeah, we'll talk about James Cawthorn a bit. So most Moorcock fans will know him from his illustrations for Mike going right back to the first images of Elric and for New Worlds and graphic adaptations of the Hawkmoon series. And they also collaborated on, of course, Fantasy, the 100 best books in the 80s. Although I think Mike said that was mostly James's work. But before that, we've talked about this before, the co-wrote the screenplay for The Land That Time Forgot, which was Moorcock's one filmed screenplay, which we covered a year or two ago on the podcast with Alistair. But Miles, you watched it just a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah, I think like the second time I've seen it, it's a lot of fun. I forget that Anthony Ainley plays the evil German, and it's really hard because I'm just used to Anthony Ainley just having the master goatee. But whenever he has like his sly, smug bastard grin in that film, you're like, oh yeah, that's the grin that antagonized Peter Davidson when he tries to deceive the king and stop Magna Carta from being signed.
Yeah, he does work as a sleazy villain, even without a beard, doesn't he? A sleazy World War I German villain. Have you seen him in any other films? There's one other I can think of.
I have not. It's just admittedly, he's like unfortunately, like one of my least favorite incarnations of the Master.
Yeah.
Because he's just too much. He's just too much of trying to do a Delgado, and it just has none. I think he only works with like in Survival with Sylvester McCoy, because anytime he turns up and with Peter Davidson, the Davidson doctor looks actively tired of his shit.
I've never seen Survival. I think that came around about the time I'd given up watching Doctor Who, but I think I've seen stills. Has he got cat whiskers in it?
He's got cat eyes because he's turning into a cat person.
Ah.
There's reasons.
Yeah, I'm sure there are.
There's always reasons. There's Doctor Who.
Yeah, there's one other film that I've seen him in. He is the vicar in The Blood on Satan's Claw.
Oh, really? I have seen The Blood on Satan's Claw.
Well worth a watch. I think it gets sort of seduced by...
Okay.
What was the name of the actress who was in that? She was in... skips my memory. She was in quite a controversial film, a Lolita style sort of film, when she was still only 15. And it was, even though it was a 60s film, it was quite sexually suggestive. So she was always attached to kind of controversy, but she ended up in a number of different British horror films, including one called that fell foul of the censors and ended up on the video nasty list, called The House on Straw Hill with Udo Kier. Yeah, which when you watch it now, you think, how on earth did this end up on the video nasty list? Like a lot of them. But yeah, House on Straw Hill, I haven't seen that for a long time.
Oh, that
cannot for the life of me remember what she was called. Somebody writing on a postcard.
Linda Hayden. I've already got that postcard. Linda Hayden, and the film you were talking about is Baby Love.
That's the one. Yeah. But anyway, for more on James Cawthorn, I recommend the excellent book from John Davey's Jade Design, James Cawthorn, The Man and His Art, by his sister Maureen and numerous other contributors, and the amazing slipcase set of his Stormbringer work, the Stormbringer Sessions, which is absolutely fucking beautiful. I've got it just down here somewhere, but I think it's buried by other things. Otherwise, I would show it off. Well, to you anyway. Nobody else could see it, can they? Well worth grabbing, though. And there's a really nice interview with James by David Britton on the Savoy website as well. RIP to both of them. I'll link to that in the show notes. I do wonder if Cawthorn's contribution reached much past the illustrations, but it's kind of hard to tell, really. The good thing about this edition is all his illustrations are fully presented along with the text.
Yeah.
Quite nice.
Yeah. They're always very nice dynamic illustrations, which...
It's quite curious reading this, because their efforts to write a conventional sci-fi tale of an expedition to Alpha Centauri to try and expand the physical limits of humanity's living space and food supply, it's not as cynical and twisted as Moorcock's other 60s sci-fi. It is very, well, in many ways, I suppose, conventional.
It's very much in the kind of pulp tradition. And I think that's like you said, Moorcock definitely has a much more cynical worldview if you go by any of the other 60s SF novels, where this is Dan, kind of like Dan Dare Journey into Space, like pulp lark a minute.
It is, and it's really, in some ways, it's like two books, because the first third sets up quite a hard sci-fi premise, and it has Moorcock doing his usual thing of littering in interesting ideas that other people would run with 10 years later, and then kind of moving on. And then the other part of the book is basically an Edgar Rice Burroughs book.
Yeah.
I think they do it pretty successfully, but what is the success criteria for this kind of endeavour? And who were the exemplars for this kind of SF in the late 60s that he was trying to do a job with? I mean, there were loads of workman authors. I mean, particularly in the UK, there was, the Kenneth Bullmans, the people who churned out 150 books in the 50s and 60s, and the Sidney J. Bounces, who we've talked about before. And you even had Eric Frank Russell, who was a British writer writing this kind of hard sci-fi, but from a satirical perspective with things like The Great Explosion, which if you haven't read it, I recommend. It's a fantastic read. So there certainly wasn't a paucity of this kind of sci-fi in the UK.
It feels much more in the kind of American golden age, astounding SF. You know, like I can see it as being like very similar to a lot of the early Asimov, a lot of the Robert Heinlein, definitely more the kind of juveniles, where it's all very kind of 1950s SF for kids, and not when he goes into his own new wave period, like with Stranger in a Strange Land. But it just kind of feels like, you know, you've got Moorcock, who's got contemporaries like, you know, J.G. Ballard and Norman Spinrad in like New Worlds. And then you've got this, which, just doesn't feel like anything else that they're doing at the moment.
The closest thing I could compare this to, because of the planet-bound stuff, is Michael Caine stories. Yeah. You know, Warrior of Mars, because we'll get to it, but it is very much an ERB planet story. You know, but the hard sci-fi stuff, it's much more British in its approach, because in most of these other books, like in The Voyage of the Space Beagle by Van Vogt, by those authors, you know, the space expeditions are always militaristic and, you know, crewed by many and all this business, where this is Colonel Jerry Cornelius is Mrs. and a scientist called Professor Marek.
Professor Frank Marek.
Frank Marek, yes. So we have the Holy Trinity, don't we? We've got Jerry, Catherine, and Frank. But they're not Jerry, Catherine, and Frank.
No.
They're a completely different kettle of fish altogether. So they have the responsibility of taking the huge starship, the Hope of Man, to the stars to save the future of humanity. So I'll just read a little bit which sets the scene. I really like the first image by James Cawthorn at the start of chapter 1, actually, the kind of hooded school dude as a starship takes off in the background. I don't think it's a literal thing. It's more a, you know, indicative thing about what a shit state the Earth's in, but let's take a look. The world was on the brink of disaster. Even though the United Nations had been working in accord for the past 15 years, even though every nation on Earth was represented at the Council, even though war had been unknown since the late 20th century, still a crisis loomed. Already, China was threatening to leave the United Nations, and America was muttering about using a limited amount of force to contain certain rebellious elements who were beginning to raise their voices throughout the world. The issues were clear enough. Essentially, there were two: food and living space. There were too many people in the world. The planet was rapidly becoming overcrowded in spite of the efforts of the United Nations to implement birth control, sea farming, and all the other remedies conceived during the 20th century to cope with the problem. It was now clear that these remedies had not been implemented quickly enough. It was impossibly adequate to feed and house a large percentage of the world population, and the hungry masses were preparing to war on the more fortunate, threatening to destroy the stability that had been so hard won, planning to get what they needed by means of violence. And if this violence did at last explode, it would spread so rapidly that the entire globe would be plunged into a destructive war that might even mean the end of humanity. There was only one solution that the United Nations could see. If the world was overcrowded, then new planets must be found. New planets in new solar systems, which could support human life. This was the responsibility which weighed so heavily upon the shoulders of Colonel Jerry Cornelius. It was his job to find those planets and find them as quickly as possible, so that even larger passenger ships could be built to take colonists to the stars, where they could begin a new life with plenty of space and plenty of natural resources on fresh, new planets. And that was why the ship had been called the Hope of Man. It was a desperate remedy. It was a remedy that should not have been necessary. If more people had listened to the voices of the prophets and visionaries in the 20th century, then the situation might have been avoided. If people had learned to trust the new scientific instruments and methods that had been invented and discovered in the 20th century, if the politicians had been convinced that their use was of absolute importance, if the people had overcome their superstitions concerning scientific farming methods, birth control, computers, mechanised factories, if the educationists had concentrated on familiarising people with the ideas of science, then perhaps the stability of the world would not now be threatened, and the Hope of Man would be about to embark on a simple exploration voyage, not on a critical journey to find a last-minute solution to the mess in which the world now found itself. So it's all the fault of the bloody poor.
Yep, the poor and uneducated.
Bloody poor. Poor and educated, superstitious farmers refusing to use scientific methods.
Those Northerners and their belief that every sperm is sacred.
Yeah, absolutely outrageous. You do read this and think, this doesn't sound very Moorcock, but actually...
No.
He is... This kind of genre of SF is very conservative, isn't it?
Mm. Well, it's always the same with, like his SF novels, which is like, what's it called? The Fire Clown.
Yeah.
Or The Shores of Death, where the masses are ready to rise up, embrace fascism, and then just topple, civilization with their free love and marijuana cigarettes.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But I suppose we can see from the world around us at the moment that lots and lots of the common people, as Jarvis Cocker would have called them, are quite prepared to vote for quite fascistic tendencies if they believe certain messages. I think this is an interesting one in the entire idea, because, at the end of the day, we know that there are advanced farming techniques, but corporations could implement them tomorrow if they were for the benefit of humanity.
Yes.
But
they won't.
Don't. That's right, because there's no money in it.
Which is why we clearly need to put all our faith in a guy with a bucket on his head.
That's right. I've got myself a Count Binface lead miniature. Yeah.
Nice. I've had a lot of customers at work come up to me, and it's very clear 9 times out of 10, they don't know how elections work in the UK. So there's been a lot of times where I've had to pinch the bridge of my nose, take a deep sigh and go, okay, shut up and listen. But I'll take the people asking me about how a guy with a bucket on his head can run for political office, and not people who come up to me and go, is it true that there are areas of London which are Muslim only, which has happened to me depressingly more than I would like.
Yeah. No-go areas, Sharia law.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I've had to go, no, that's right-wing tabloid propaganda and fear-mongering. I go, oh, yeah, I know, but it's true, right?
Mate, I live in Bradford, so you would not believe the amount of times I've had to take people for task for saying, oh, Bradistan, eh?
I am very lucky that I'm from Brighton, though. And apparently every 3 to 6 months, the fascists come down to Brighton and then get peaceably chased out of town by the masses, led by Fatboy Slim.
Yeah. A few years ago, we were we considered ourselves very lucky that when all of those ridiculous mini riots were going on in English town centres, with people demonstrating against immigration by breaking into shoe shops and Lush and nicking soap and smashing windows. We were sitting in the centre of Bradford on a beautiful day, surrounded by all of the diversity, and none of those fucking idiots will come here and cause trouble, because the people who tend to cause that trouble don't live in areas where there is diversity. I don't know. Anyway, we're getting political. Oh,
we're getting political on a Michael Moorcock podcast.
What a surprise!
And in the first 3 pages, I guess Moorcock and Cawthorn going, right, we preach the benefits of science to the poor huddled masses of, when you say it out loud, it just has that very kind of paternalistic colonialist overtones those poor Indian people don't understand the benefits of science. They're just obsessed with their political religious warfare. Like, who drew the lines separating India and Pakistan?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? Because even Moorcock himself says in the introduction that the editorial staff changed when this was being published in its 18 parts as a serial in the Illustrated Times of India. The people who took over printed the rest of it, but he never had any further communication with them and never found out how it was received or anything else. And he just said in the introduction that he was quite pleased and proud to be able to incorporate aspects into the story which might appeal to Indian audiences. And all the way through the book, I was thinking, right, what are we going to find here? So we've got a British crew staffing a starship that will save humanity. So 3 white saviours in a spaceship, which just happens to be launched from Gandhi Spaceport in India. Oh, it's like, I'll throw them a bone.
Yeah.
Let's Gandhi Spaceport with Field Marshal Hera. I think that's the only other character that pops up from the Cornelius Chronicles, isn't it? But it's Field Marshal Hera, so it's JINO, Hera in name only. And there is a twist at the end, which I'm sure we'll talk about to some extent. But anyway, Jerry and Kathy, happy couple, not siblings. Professor Frank Marek is a rough and cynical academic with a dim view of humanity. He was like, yeah, I don't fucking care if humanity dies out. Let's go to this new planet. That's our core crew. And they use a neat device to get through some techno-babble when they attend a pre-flight press conference with the journalists of the world. This was used quite a lot in more grounded sci-fi films in the 60s. Things like Escape from the Planet of the Apes. It's like, right, we've got some exposition to do. Let's have scientists in front of the press answering questions to make it more dynamic than just two scientists having a back-and-forth conversation.
It's the same thing they do in 2001: A Space Odyssey, where you have them watching the BBC interview with them before they launch, or as they launched.
Yep, that's right. So this lively Q&A, what does it explain to us? The hope of man uses warp drive to fold space to reduce journey times. Common for SF by that point, standard stuff, but question for you, Miles. Obviously, warp drive wasn't an invention of Gene Roddenberry because it had been around in fiction for a while. But in Star Trek, is warp drive ever explained in more detail as to how it works?
Not in the actual show. I'm sure if you read, like, 5 Star Trek novels, you'll get differing opinions, or the same with all the various kind of technical kind of books that you can buy, which go, this is how the science of Star Trek works. But it's like, nope, this is basically our magic thing that makes spaceship go. And if you're watching classic Trek, magical thing which will break as soon as you look at it wrong. So we can go down to the planet and get the all-important dilithium crystals from some robot computer that declares itself God.
Yeah, I think the important thing for a serialized, like, episodic series, or an episodic series like Star Trek, is don't establish any hard and fast laws about your technology that we then have to break next week for plot purposes. Yeah. So the concept of folding space is never mentioned.
It's like Space 1999. It's like, how fast is the moon going? Because they're going for a lot of star systems very quickly.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, don't worry about it.
Look, at least it's not anything written by Terry Nation, because that guy does not understand the difference of what a solar system or a galaxy is. Because there are several points when Travis goes, I've chased Blake into this other galaxy. Have you, Travis? Have you really?
The rules of how space works in Blake 7, forget it. Forget about it. Yeah,
and all the planets are just kind of conveniently named for the plot of the episode. Yes, our planet is Destiny or Despero or Webinar.
Yeah. Nevertheless, best TV show ever. Well, competition with Space 1999 season 1, maybe. But anyway, the Space...
The 60s Outer Limits.
Oh, well, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I did enjoy that. I used to watch that as a kid at my nana and granddad's house. Yeah. The folding space angle, of course, big thing for space travel in Dune. Used to great effect in Event Horizon, of course, when Sam Neill, R.I.P. Sam Neill,
R.I.P.
folds over his pin-up poster and pokes a hole through the 2 connected points to connect opposite pages with a pen, which is something Professor Stephen Hawking used to do, apparently, when he gave lectures. But the folded paper concept goes actually back to the 50s. Heinlein used that in stories in the 1950s, apparently. Yeah. But anyway, Mike and James are double teaming it with space warp and folding space. The other thing we'll learn at the press conference is the ship is an incredibly advanced, almost sentient ship compared to an immense space-going whale with superhuman faculties, which made me think, oh, this is very the culture. But actually, in practice, we find not so much, because pretty much anything the ship does, it's told to do. Although it does sustain some damage, which we'll get to. And they do reflect a little after the press conference that the one potential wrinkle in the expedition is the space warp. And if that goes awry, well, what might happen? Foreshadowing, probably, because I'd like to think this would just be an 150-page adventure in studying alien vegetation. That'd be really boring. But we do get a little bit more on the trio's motivations. Professor Marek was whistling cheerfully as the assistant zipped him up in his bulky suit. Jerry wished he had the professor's healthy cynicism about the venture, but it was too important to him. Trained as a biophysicist, Cornelius had spent his early years involved in research into nutrition, but the work had become steadily less satisfying, and he had entered the United Nations Air Service and trained as a pilot flying planes of emergency rations to out-of-the-way parts of the globe. But still, the itching sense of unfulfillment, still the sense that he was not making the best use of himself, either of his own benefit or for society's. At last, the opportunity had arisen for him to join the Space Service. He had served on various missions to the nearer planets, doing valuable research and feeling fairly satisfied. But it was not until the Alpha Centauri mission had come up that he had realised that this was what he had been waiting for all his adult life. The training had been intense, gruelling, sometimes heartbreaking, but it had been worth it. Cathy, trained as an ethnologist, had had a similar background, had studied ecology, also had experience of expeditions to Mars, Ganymede and Neptune. Marek, however, was something of an unknown quantity. A brilliant physicist, he had headed the team which had made the first descent into Jupiter's red spot, and had also been the first to unravel the secret of the rings of Saturn. He appeared to have no nerves at all, and certainly understood a great deal more about the detailed workings of the ship than the others, yet he did not seem particularly interested in the mission. Perhaps that was just the front he presented to the world, Jerry decided. So I say we find out more on their motivations, a bit more on Jerry and Marek. Cathy, not so much, just that she's qualified. She's a qualified woman.
She's a qualified woman from Oxford College, Yale, and she has 2 A's.
You know what, Cathy? Not a lot. Not a lot of substance, unsurprisingly. There are 2 female characters in this book. We'll get to the other one. Yeah. And then they're off. Jerry quickly reflects on the mysteries of warp drive and how the first ever entry into hyperspace will take them into the unknown. So we have the Grand Slam. We've got warp drive, we've got folding space, and we've got hyperspace. And of course, this is also where everything went wrong for the crew of the Event Horizon. That was a test of the entry through the warp into hyperspace, wasn't it? Have you heard the fan theories that the events of Event Horizon are set in the same universe as Warhammer 40k?
Oh, of course I've heard that one.
Yeah. The Event Horizon's drive opened a portal to the Warp, also known as the Empyrean, in that setting. So, for people who don't know, the Warp in Warhammer 40,000 is a place of insanity and madness and death and horror. And I think in that they have a Holtzman shield that protects the ship. Or is that the shield in Dune? Anyway, there's some kind of shield.
I think the Holtzman shield might be from Dune because that sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
As your kind of reason why everyone fights with swords and knives and not las guns.
Yeah, but there's some kind of shield named after an inventor in Warhammer 40,000 that protects the ship from the effects of the warp. So, we've got another 130 pages to go. I wonder if the Hope of Man will meet Ariok in hyperspace. Probably not, but anyway. There's a really, really nice section. We could have read this, but we've been going 30 minutes and we're only 15 pages into the book. But there's a really solid description of what happens when they enter the warp. And in this, the warp is really the barrier between normal space and hyperspace. So the ship takes them through 3 phases to get them through the warp into hyperspace where everything settles down. But the actual transition through the 3 phases of warp are absolutely horrific. They hallucinate, they see crazy demonic things, they see wild colours. It makes them feel like they're losing their minds. It's absolutely horrific and terrifying. And it's pretty solid stuff. But before that, there's a really nice bit where I've actually probably got ahead of ourselves, really, because there's a really nice bit where they're leaving the solar system. And the way it describes like the expanse of space and how lonely and inhospitable and how, like, you know, all these other things, and that this massive ship is like a pinprick of steel in this vast emptiness. One
of the things I do like about Moorcock's SF is that whenever he has to deal with space travel, it's the complete change of scale.
Yeah.
Which is completely antithetical to the human condition, which I think it's The Shores of Death, where the idea that if you travel through space, you are just going to go mad through the sheer horror of it. Or like the Black Corridor.
But yeah, there's that film, The Pandorum, which is basically about space sickness and what happens when you're in space for an extended period of time. Yeah, that's quite a good film, actually. I enjoyed that. That was supposed to be a trilogy, but I don't think the guy who did that has ever done another film.
No, I keep meaning to watch it, but I've heard it. You know, it just didn't land really. I guess from what I've heard.
It didn't land with audiences, but I think it's actually a pretty solid film. It's got some terrific imagery in it. It's really well directed. It's all physical. There's very little CGI. It's all sets, practical effects. The acting's great. Okay, it's got Dennis Quaid in it, which, you know, you can't have everything. But the acting is really, really good. I think it's a terrific film. Very violent as well.
It's like I really liked Sunshine, which I got to see in the cinema. And I've always just appreciated that film. And just the idea that the further you isolate yourself from Earth, the just more detached you get from your humanity. To the point where you have Pinbacker shout out to Darkstar.
Yeah.
Just going, yep, there is no hope at all. I'm going to go insane.
Yeah, I love all the stuff with, what's the New Zealand actor called? Cliff Curtis. All the stuff with Cliff Curtis sitting in the room where they can view the sun, just getting more and more crusty and sunburned with his sunglasses on because he just can't keep away, it's like, as his brain kind of disintegrates.
And that film is just a who's who of actors whose career is going to take off in about 10 years. You've got, like, young babyface Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
You've got,
Chris Evans.
Benedict
Wong.
That's the actor, Benedict Wong.
Benedict Wong, Michelle Yeoh, and, of course, Rose Byrne.
Yeah, Mark Strong playing...
Pinbacker. Yeah, well, that's Mark Strong's start of his prolific period, isn't it? Where he just pop up in absolutely fucking every Hollywood film you turned on. Mark Strong would pop up in it in some kind of strange villainous role. And you know what? I never took to Mark Strong until I saw him in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, where he wasn't playing a villain.
Isn't he in the Kingsman film basically playing like the Alfred/Q role?
Yeah, he is. But that's after he'd gone through this like endless series of playing villains in big budget genre movies. So he's a villain in John Carter, he's a villain in the first Sherlock Holmes film, he's a villain in Kick-Ass. I think he got overexposed as a villain, so seeing him in different roles was quite nice. But yeah, it's all solid stuff. There's a shot in one of the Ridley Scott Alien films, one of the Alien sequels, that kind of works. It worked better on a cinema screen than at home, to be honest. It's a shot of a big expanse of space with a tiny dot transitioning from left to right, giving you this like impression of just like the vastness of space, and this massive spaceship that they're on is just a pinprick of light going from left to right. Really, really terrific. Might have been Prometheus. Obviously, not the best film, but it does have some wonderful shots in it. Yeah. There's an offhand reference, too, as the past Jupiter, and Marek is reflecting on his 3 missions there to the 4 ships and 30 people lost in expeditions there, reinforcing the notion in this version of the future that space is really fucking dangerous. Outside of the dialogue between Jerry and Kathy and some of the other characters, which is all very, how would you describe it? It's quite staid and fitting for a 1960s straight sci-fi novel. But actually, the element of danger that's introduced to the space travel setting is really obvious and really, really evident. You know, exploring space isn't Dan Dare landing on a planet and hoisting a flag. 4 spaceships and 30 people died exploring Jupiter, which makes it feel more outlandy. It
is that thing, just because of the ubiquitousness of how interstellar travel works, like in shows like Star Trek.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, you have the Enterprise D, which is basically a cruise ship in space, just to disguise from the fact that you could get killed by a giant cosmic face at any moment. Everything is dangerous. That's the thing I picked up from watching Star Trek so much, is just how weird the universe is in Star Trek.
It's a strange dichotomy, isn't it, Star Trek? Because on one hand, space travel seems clean and safe, and as you say, like, you know, it looks like a cruise liner. And in Star Trek The Next Generation, they've got all their families on board. Yeah. But nevertheless, week after week, it's a fucking horror show. In terms of the dangers of being in space.
It's like we joke about, we watch Space 1999 every so often when we feel too British to have to deal with the optimistic Americanism of Star Trek. It's like, yep, we're feeling a bit moody this week, so let's just watch Brian Blessed melt.
Yeah. I just recently recorded again with Matteo about Space 1999. We talked about a novelisation of 3 episodes. The novelisation is called The Space Guardians. That'll be coming up in 2 or 3 episodes' time. But it's absolutely the case that in Space 1999, every week, a well-known British character actor will be fucking destroyed by the experience of being in space. Yeah. Or a well-known British character actor will be the destructive force that absolutely fucks people up. Yeah. Or in some cases, occasionally an Italian character actor. Yeah. But it's absolutely terrific. So we'll be talking about the one with Ian McShane.
Oh, we watched that one.
Absolute belter.
We had to watch that one for one of our Space 1999 episodes, and God, I was surprised that he plays a character who's actually quite nice.
Yeah.
Because it's Ian McShane. I expect him to play like a bastard. It's like, no. He's dedicated to, he's good at his job, and everyone likes him. You're like, no, he's got to be like dealing meth on the side. This is Ian McShane.
Yeah, I mean, it's pre-Lovejoy, Ian McShane, as well. So really, Ian McShane, if he was popping up in things, he tended to be a criminal. So if he's in Villain, or if he's in that hijack movie with, that plane hijack movie with, is Sean Connery in it, or is it Stanley Baker? I can't remember, but he was generally tending to pop up in movies as villains, as criminals.
Yeah, he plays a right bastard in The Last of Sheila, which is a great, like, mystery. If you like the Knives Out films...
Yeah.
The Last of Sheila is a great 70s all-star mystery, kind of whodunit mystery film.
Oh, it's good stuff. You know what? They're going to warp.
Yeah, they're going to warp.
They're going to warp, and I will just read a little bit. It says, at last it was time to activate the warp controls. Jerry switched on and watched the control board come alive with flashing lights, simulators, and indicators. His instructions were to phase gradually into warp drive, but once the drive had been set at go, there was no turning back. The ship's programming would do the rest, would see them into hyperspace and, with luck, out the other side, relatively close to Alpha Centauri. But the warp had never had a true test. They might disappear forever into that limbo. A new horrifying death might await them, a death that their minds simply could not conceive, perhaps an eternity of different deaths in that timeless, spaceless place. Jerry took a deep breath and glanced at Catherine as he began to punch the instructions out on the control panel. He knew that this might be the last time he would ever look at his beautiful young wife again, and he was suddenly filled with a sense of terror. They were about to leap blindly into the unknown, go where no living creature had been before. Quelling the terror as best he could, Jerry pressed the final button. Now the program was locked into the computer. There was no turning back.
So it's the final program?
It's the final program. It's Event Horizon. It's all of these things.
See, if I was in that situation, I'll be honest, I would start screaming before I pushed the lever.
Yeah. Now, I think it is time for us to formally add The Distant Suns to the list of overt Moorcock influences on 40k and Event Horizon, because it absolutely is. Because if that doesn't confirm it, Chapter 5 certainly confirms it.
Yep.
But we'll be here all night if we read it, because there's about 5 pages describing the terrifying effects of the warp on the 3 crew members, and it's really fucking horrific and terrible. And even does, as I said, even does include them having apparently views of or hallucinations of ancient demons and all sorts of weird shit.
That's one of the best illustrations, which is Jerry and Catherine like falling into a screaming toothy maw on page 29.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible, isn't it? So the people who came up with that aspect of space travel in Warhammer 40,000 have definitely read this. And so the people who wrote Event Horizon, I reckon. Yeah. It is too long for us to read, because we'll be here all night if we do. But the pass through the 3 phases of warp, it's fucking nuts. But the most profound effect seems to be on the ship's central nervous system. And their first major problem, other than passing through the horrific nightmare experience of the warp, is upon them. There's a real nice passage where Jerry goes through the different compartments of the ship, looking for damage. If this was a horror film, it would be just like Brett going and looking around the Nostromo, looking for potential damage and things, and looking for repairs they need to get back on track as they count down to the re-entry into normal space and steel themselves for the effect of going through the warp again to get out of hyperspace.
And Frank has clearly gone mad.
Yeah, Frank is gone completely nuts. He's lost it, and the warp has turned him into a crazed, huddled, and twisted mess with a gun, which is a bit of a nightmare.
I love just the idea of which you get it a lot, like in a lot of the old sci-fi, which is we're going to planets that we've never been to. We have this hyper advanced technology. We better be fucking packing.
Yeah, we better be packing a laser pistol that can punch a hole right through the roof and out into space.
Meanwhile, Journey into Space, the BBC radio show, which is an amazing bit of 1950s hard SF.
Yeah.
Which gets downright terrifying. At several times, they highlight the fact that no one thought to bring a gun with them to Mars.
Well, it's a British show, isn't it?
It's
take a gun with them?
It's like, we don't have a gun, but we do have a comic relief Jewish Cockney lad.
Just read this bit. It says, Marek giggled and motioned at Jerry with the laser gun. You're as bad as the rest. The human race is like a virus. It's infected one planet, now it seeks to infect the entire galaxy. I'll have no part of it. You're a cancer, Jerry, you and your like, and I have a cure for cancer. I'll burn it out with this. See what you did there, Mike?
Yep.
There are so many amazing things that we'd accept as modern staples going on in here, though, because Mike knows his subject material, and in some ways, he might even be innovating some of it. I'm not well read enough on harder sci-fi to know, but Frank's laser pistol, when it pierces the hull, and the ship, on command from Jerry, activates the hull breach mechanism of filling the hole with pseudo-metallic gunk between the layers of the hull to plug the leak. That'd be shaving foam in Blake 7, wouldn't it?
Yup.
Episode 2 of Blake 7, that's shaving foam. But the best bit, it says, he switched to a view on the television screen of the outside of the hull in section 15. Within moments, a small repair robot had left its special kennel in the outer hull and was crawling along towards the damaged area, its bright metal body glinting in the dazzling light of Alpha Centauri. Ah, nice. Shades of Silent Running. And another film, but a shit one we won't mention, because there are some things we just don't talk about on this podcast. Yeah.
Are you talking about, hang on, are you talking about Star Wars The Phantom Menace?
Well, I said there are some things we just don't talk about on this podcast.
Fair enough.
Because they're shit. So I'm neither going to confirm nor deny it. On a positive note, though, amongst the many planets and moons of moons, they found a supporting world and head for it, and it's got a city. So Frank Marek is contained. They've landed on an alien moon of a moon in the Alpha Centauri system after a terrifying experience in the warp, and they just need the narrative. The narrative does refer to it as the warp. We should point out this terrifying place is referred to as the warp. Just need to stress that for 40k people. And then the ship lands stern first like a 1950s rocket ship. And that's the biggest reminder I've had so far that this is Moorcock doing old school SF in the 60s. Because up until now, there are a few reminders, but all the technology sounds quite interesting.
Yeah, and the way the ship is drawn is a lot less, Tintin. Because, whenever I think of that kind of traditional, like, space rocket landing completely upright, I'm always thinking of the fantastic cover for Explorers on the Moon with Tintin and Captain Haddock pointing at the rocket.
Or Thunderbird 3.
Or Thunderbird 3.
Yeah, whereas the one in these Cawthorn images at the beginning of each chapter and some other places, they're much more like a Ballard and Ellie ship in the first 2000 AD Dan Dare series. Much more dynamic, much more interesting shapes, much more fluid and organic. Yeah. You could tell this was a serial, though, because we're getting regular cliffhangers. Cliffhanger after cliffhanger, and we'll get many, many more. But the episodic structure does work for Mike and his fantasy novels in particular, because that's kind of how they work. So this still feels much like reading a Moorcock novel with its like chapter cliffhangers and its habit of throwing in some foreshadowing, but it's generally foreshadowing something that happens 2 pages later rather than half a book later.
Oh, I do have to kind of point something out on a bit of a kind of a morality whoopsie, which is they see a city and at no point do they think, maybe we shouldn't settle here. Instead, Jerry goes, this is what they had come to Alpha Centauri to find. A world that can support human life. A new world. An unspoiled world. A world where people equipped with all the knowledge and science of the 21st century could begin afresh. All the previous inhabitants might have to go.
No prime directive. Yeah.
No prime directive, no idea that they're basically doing a colonialism.
Yeah. Although, in his defence, he does feel guilty that they set loads of plants on fire when they land and puts them out with space fire extinguishers around the base of the ship. So, he has got some limited moral, I don't know, I can't think of what I'm trying to say. I'm drinking Ruby Mild. I'm losing my vocabulary. This is really fucking nice, though, actually, this Rudgate Deep Red Mild. I do like a Ruby beer and I do like a mild. So a nice 4.4% Ruby Smoky Velvety Mild. Very, very nice.
Good.
Yeah. I'm impressed with you, Rudgate Brewery. Thanks very much. Got these at a farm shop farm shop, restaurant and boo. You get these like little crafty shop type things at farm shops that just have weird chocolates, weird booze, weird pasta shells, and all sorts of other really expensive wine. And it's quite nice, just by the base of the Humber Bridge on the Lincolnshire side. Yeah, it was all right. Anyway, that's beer. So Frank comes round and appears to not remember his freak out, but he faints on the stairs as they go down to the surface, so they put him back to bed, and he agrees to stay on board whilst they explore, and he feels much better. He's just a bit faint. Psych! He fucks off in the spaceship and leaves them stranded the moment they're 200 yards away from the spaceship.
He pulls an Ernest Borgnine in the black hole.
He does. Yeah, he absolutely does. Yeah. There's a pretty cool section, very Moorcock. Ancient alien city gone to seed. Old technology still functioning, whilst degenerate human types live in their own filth amongst the grandeur. See, poor people rejecting technology again.
They wallow in their own shit, so it's okay to take the planet over in the name of humanity.
In the name of humanity and civilization. Yeah, and advanced technology. But there's a couple of chases, some big machines, then they get overwhelmed and captured by the smellers. Oh, cliffhanger. After all the hard SF trappings, this is where we go full Edgar Rice Burroughs pastiche, because Jerry awakes in the captivity of more civilized, but nevertheless rather stern humans with gold-tinged skin, who he finds are the Sev Kalan, the people of the upper city. And they rescued him from the savages of the lower city, the Sev Alab.
Do you know which SF writer we didn't bring up earlier? H.G. Wells.
Oh,
because they who even gets kind of name checked, because Kathy does refer to the lower ones as Morlocks.
Yeah, she said they're like Morlocks, but then Jerry mansplains to her that these Morlocks don't look interested in machinery or technology. They're almost anti-Morlocks, Kathy, actually. I think you'll find.
Kathy, get back in the Hope of Man and cook me dinner.
That's right. But there's no sign of Kathy, and as is traditional, while they're all busting his balls, there's a sympathetic girl who takes a shine to him and helps him out, particularly when they take him to the Wall, a vast technological thingamy that they use to try people, but it's usually fatal. So she says, no, don't touch the wall, it'll kill you. And everybody goes, boo, you're in trouble, girl. And this is all barreling along now. She intervenes to save him. And it's another good indicator of how much Moorcock drew from Rice Burroughs in some of his more adventure-based 60s output, even down to Jerry exploiting the lower gravity to his advantage in physical confrontations. Yeah. So he duffs them up, and they escape through the city. It's all a swear from the first third of the book. It's all gone Edgar Rice Burroughs. It's all gone Moorcock, latest episode, adventure, strange city, ancient technology, sweaty, smelly oiks. But it's not nearly as interesting as the warp stuff, which is a shame. And we saw in The Black Corridor, The Winds of Limbo, The Blood Red Game, and all those other ones that we've done, that just tossing off ideas, then moving on and leaving others to prize them open later on is very, very 60s Moorcock. But he roughs up these Sev Kalan, escapes with a girl who, despite being the keeper of records in this city, is a bit weepy and pathetic once they actually get on the run. But they do some cat and mouse shit, try to figure out what happened to Kathy, but the best bit in this part of the book is we get an interlude with Frank on board the spaceship. And I really love this. The hope of man was falling. A sleek, sentient cylinder of titanium steel, she slid through the impalpable currents of interplanetary space, her nuclear engines silent. She was falling from apogee to perigee, from the outermost point of her elliptical orbit to the innermost in a stupendous, suicidal swoop. Frank Marek savoured her fall. He was alive and well and alert. He was exalted and exultant. He was doomed. Weightless, he floated in the disorder of the control room, staring through an unshielded vision port at the blue-white giant planet falling swiftly astern. He yelled into the dark cavern of the ship, "Who is your master? Who made you?" And the ship answered in stunning, echoing amplification, "Marek! Marek! Marek!" Marek laughed. He laughed at space, at the orange-tinted world he had left, at the wide encircling universe. Again he yelled to the ship that was now his creature, "What is the hope of man?" And the ship answered, "Death! Death is the hope of man! Death! Death! Death!" And Marek was content.
Is it me, or is Frank Marek more of your traditional Moorcock SF protagonist, of someone who has a very cynical worldview and is slowly driven mad by the craziness around him?
You get this character in all of his 60s SF, don't you?
Yeah.
And they're always the more interesting ones.
Yeah, and
they're much more interesting than Boy Scout spaceship captain.
The protagonist of Clovis Marker, who is not a Von Beck.
Yes. Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Very true. I'm glad that there hasn't been a re-release of this, but he was already called Jerry Cornelius. You couldn't really call him Jerry Von Beck.
No, they could have maybe changed Frank's name.
Yeah. I've not been through my Golanx collections or my Millennium collections with some of the collections of the more disconnected 60s SF stuff to see if The Distant Suns is in any of them.
It's in Sailing to Utopia.
Ah.
So it's in the book that contains the ice schooner, Black Corridor, and like a short story called Flux. Because I remember that one, because that has this fantastic, I think it's a Yoshitaka Amano cover.
It does.
Of Ulrich Scargill.
Scargill.
Of a burly Welsh union leader being pulled along by his polar bears on his massive sled.
I do have that on the shelf, buried behind.
But I don't think anyone's been Von Becht in that one.
I bloody hope not. But I might pull it off the shelf and just give it a quick skim through. But we go back to Jerry and the girl, who's called Le Pinu. And no, they're trapped. Oh no, it's okay. They got away again. There's a lot of that.
It's very Flash Gordon serial.
It's very 6 or 8 part 60s Doctor Who serial.
Yep. There's not enough escaping from prisons to be a 6 or 8 part Doctor Who serial.
Yeah. Actually, a 6 or 8 part Doctor Who serial wouldn't have escapes as trivial as this either, would they? It's like, oh no, we're trapped. Oh, it's all right, we've got away. Yeah.
I don't know, I've just been watching The Mind of Evil, and Joe Grant tries to escape from prison an awful lot. No, it's The Ambassadors of Death, where Liz Shaw keeps breaking free from being kidnapped, only to get captured again.
Yeah. Is it The Ambassadors of Death that was like 7 parts?
Yes. And
it's one of the few that are like an odd number.
Yeah, there are a lot of 7-parters in the Pertwee era.
Yeah.
And very few of them deserve that length.
Yeah,
but
I remember Mind of Evil and Ambassadors of Death could easily have been 4-parters.
In fact, Mind of Evil took me 3 months to watch, because a lot of it is, okay, the killer machine is just dotting around a prison killing everybody. Not everything is as good as Inferno, with having a story that keeps going.
Inferno is justifiably a long serial. Absolutely
Inferno's
justifiable.
My favourite classic. Because honestly, as much as I love Pertwee, I love it when it looks like the Pertwee Doctor actually has to try and can't just smarm his way out of everything.
One of the reasons I love Inferno, I think I'm getting a serious case of deja vu. But maybe not everybody listens to this podcast, or every episode of the podcast, so I'm going to say it again. The Inferno DVD, there is a commentary track for every episode, and just one of the episodes has a solo commentary from Sergeant Benton. And it is absolutely brilliant. It is brilliant. What was the name of the actor? John Levine.
John Levine.
And again, I think I've said this before on another podcast, but I'm going to say it again. There is also a DVD of the little independent film he did about Sergeant Benton and Unit. I think it's called War something. Anyway, it's on this DVD, and there's loads and loads of extras with John Levine. And one of them, absolutely terrific, it's John Levine with a lady on like a Casio keyboard crooning at what appears to be outside at what appears to be like a railway museum or something.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and is out there crooning on the grass with this lady with the keyboard, and people with prams are just walking past paying no attention whatsoever.
Best way to deal with it.
It's so wonderful. It's so wonderful, yeah.
I think I generally don't listen to the like a lot of the commentary tracks on Doctor Who. Like, the best commentary tracks for a British TV serial is the classic Tomorrow People, because everyone watching it is just making fun of the show that they were in back in the 70s.
Yeah.
And there's one where Peter Davidson, infamously one of his first guest roles as a young actor, is sitting down and is almost horrified that you're like, wait, you're allowed to make fun of the show you're watching, you're part of? This is great. Give me a beer.
I've heard that, and I've never listened to it because I don't really like the film, but I've heard that the Ben Affleck commentary on Armageddon is supposed to be hilarious because he just spends 2 hours picking holes in it.
The Bruce Campbell documentary commentary for the first Evil Dead is great, because there's one point where he admits that there's a scene where everyone was just filming while stoned.
Yeah. I think my 2 favourite commentaries. Actually, no, I've probably got 3. There's the commentary with John Carpenter and Rowdy Roddy Piper on They Live. It's priceless. Because basically it's just a combination of John Carpenter talking about why he made certain shot selections, and you can hear him lighting cigarettes with his Zippo. And next to him there's Rowdy Roddy Piper, who's talking about how They Live is basically a documentary. Which he was well ahead of his time in that respect, to be honest, because 20 years later he's probably right, but it is funny.
I think like the Spinal, there's a commentary on Spinal Tap, which is done in universe of the band Spinal Tap watching the film and having to talk about the fact that they're currently in legal action against the director of the film over how he makes them look like complete idiots.
It's absolutely incredible.
There's one scene when it's like the big record revealing party, and there's this weird avant-garde painting, and one of them goes, a little bit later in the evening, I tried to climb into that painting. It's like there's the commentary for Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which has the actors watching all in character, to keep with the all in character. Yeah,
it's amazing. And the only other one I've ever come across anything like it is the one for Tropic Thunder, because in the film, Robert Downey Jr.'s character says, "I don't break character until I've done the DVD commentary," and he does the commentary in character as Kirk Lazarus in character. Robert Downey Jr. is an obscenely wealthy man now, but there was a time when he was just a pisshead having a good time doing a lot of this stuff. Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, right, I'm just going to crack up with this other beer. What have I got now? Rudgate York Chocolate Stout, rich, smooth, chocolatey. All right, so it's like pudding. My mild was my main course, and this is my pudding.
You know that one guy who commented on one of our Doctor Who episodes, is there anything you two won't talk about?
Is there any bush you won't beat about?
I have no clue what he means. We have kept strictly to topic this time round.
That's right. There is no bush we will not beat about. Turns out, anyway, according to the girl, there is another bunch of weirdos from another city, and these people kidnap girls and women and are known as the Alanga. And the Alanga kidnapped her sister. So they head for Alangaville. And the girl is pouty and a bit immature, despite apparently being some kind of academic keeper of records or something. Jerry, at this point, is still not past any mental comment on her appearance. But it comes eventually where he says, she's actually quite pretty. Jerry picks up a signal from Kathy's transmitter, but finds it in some bloody mud. Oh no, cliffhanger. This might be getting ever so slightly tedious now. I don't know. Maybe that's the point. I'm more interested in what Frank is up to. And that's great, because the next chapter is all about Frank. Fuck it, let's read it.
Merrick whimpered. He floated through the curving spaces of the Hope of Man, weightless, in free fall. His body was curled in sleep, arms clasping knees, head tucked down upon his chest. A nimbus of dark hair waved about his face. Small things pursued him, borne on the eddying air current circulating through the ship. A flask trailed shining globes of liquor, which collided constantly, breaking into ever smaller droplets, creating a universe of mirrors, an endless succession of Mareks, tiny and distorted, revolved with their slow spinning dance. This is how you notice the British ship, they packed booze. The ship murmured. Messages flashed along the intricate network of her electronic nerves. On the control console, screens glowed. Marek stirred, reached out, groping at the air. His legs moved fitfully. He mumbled. It was summer, and the broad avenue shimmered with sunlight. Dust eddied about the carefully spaced trees, rustled on the grey armour of the riot cars parked in their shadow. White-helmeted police slacked in their gun turrets, bored and sweating. Marek ran past them, shouting, his lips cracked and dry. They did not stir. His words died on the hot, still air. The avenue stretched before him interminably, a quivering mirage of glass and concrete, ponderous parallel rows of monuments to a dead political creed that he scarcely remembered. As the rocks swallow and compress green forests and transmute their substance into strange forms, so the pressures of the 21st century had seized and warped the social institutions of the 20th, piling stress upon stress faster than their sagging structures could adjust. But it would all end soon. The world would be clean and clear. Why couldn't he make them hear? Why was his throat so constricted? The ship was troubled. A program had been fed into her circuits, locked into her immense, complex computer brain. In a little while, the huge and beautiful automation that was the Hope of Man would enter phase 1 of the warp, the first step into that strange sub-universe of hyperspace beyond the laws of orthodox cosmology. Of all the precautions taken by the gifted scientists who had designed her, working on the sketchiest of information about a region which could not be probed in advance, the most sternly enforced had been that regarding the proximity of matter. No one really knew what might happen if the forces of the warp were released within the area of distorted space surrounding a sun, but theoretical predictions were apocalyptic enough to deter the rashest of experimenters. Stripped of its esoteric mathematics, the warning had been impressed upon the mind of the Hope of Man. Stellar mass and the warp do not mix, and yet her master, Marek, had set her upon the path of destruction, initiating the sequence of spatial reorientations that will culminate in the shift into hyperspace, while her present orbit led her with decreasing speed towards a small planet that burned remote and bright in her vision screens. The ship was troubled, but meanwhile, there were dangers that she could deal with. Her defenses went into action. He had used his native tongue only rarely during the 20 years that had elapsed since he emigrated to the Californian Republic, and it was strange now to hear it all about him. The avenue was thronged with men, women, and children, clad in the gay, casual clothes that were the universal form of summer dress. Flowers on a coffin lid, Marek thought, as he pushed his way through the crowd. He had come home, back to the continent of his youth, bearing a message. The message was liberation. Liberation beyond the feeble dreams of the revolutionaries who had roved Asia and the American states. The final liberation. The bombs were coming. The multi-headed missiles. The nuclear rain that would wash the earth, sterilize it, cleanse it of the squirming, polluting mass that was humanity. He came to a vast open space surrounding the pedestal of a statue built on a scale of paranoid grandeur. Standing amid the unheeding strollers, he cried his news, arms outflung to the sky, and it was true. The sky vanished, was wiped away by a fire intolerably bright that burned through his closed eyelids as the bombs exploded, and exploded, and exploded. Marek awoke screaming. The screens above him flickered with brilliant, intermittent flashes as the atomic shield of the ship intercepted and vaporized fragments of rock and metal. The debris of the planet-forming process, streaming eternally around a distant orange sun. There was nothing there to deflect him from his course. He shook his head as if to clear his vision, and looked across the control room at the chronometer. Phase 1 was near, and Frank is clearly in a much more weirder novel.
Frank is the best bit about this. I muted myself so I could just eat some flapjack while you were reading and slurp some beer without making a racket in the background. Frank is by far the most interesting character in this book, and his journey and his arc are the most interesting. I really enjoyed that. But unfortunately, we have to go back to Jerry and Paley New. Hurrah for Frank, huzzoo to Jerry and Paley. So Paley New, Jerry has noticed, is very pretty. He has a quick encounter with weird animals. And the most eventful moment is when the sky lights up with a cataclysmic explosion. And he thinks, oh no, the hope of man has gone. It's exploded out in space. But meanwhile, back on Earth, we get another interlude. Field Marshal Hera is contemplating the deterioration of civilized society, whilst a vast number of dissidents descend upon the Gandhi Spaceport and Control Centre, including an Einstein cult called the Church of Relativity, who object to hyperspace travel, circumventing Einsteinian physics, and literally opening a gate to hell. They know what's up. If only they'd been around in Event Horizon to stop all that happening. So all he could do is hope for the crew of the Hope of Man to succeed and return with news of a new world.
I love the picture of the Einstein protesters, because you've got one guy who's got a badge saying E equals MC squared. You have another guy who has two badges which say Ein in one and Stein in the other. And you have a guy in the front who looks like the Wolfman.
Yeah, what's that about? Also, the guy with Ein on one sticker and Stein on the other has also got a number 5 on his chin for some reason. No idea why. And the banners say, holes in space will swallow our Earth. There is no universe but Einstein's. And there's a guy with a beard and a woolly hat. But yes, the Wolfman is there as well for some reason. Don't know why. But meanwhile, back on Planet Bayer, we know it's called Bayer now, Planet Bayer, Jerry and Lepinu have found some Alanga to talk to. And just like in Edgar Rice Burroughs' book, there are different variety of the human-like creatures on this world, and these lot are barbaric spear wielders riding strange beasts, and they're anti-technology and anti-machine. So they don't like Jerry's ride, or his laser rifle, or that he's with a girl from the Techno City. So Jerry is not giving up his gear, so oh no, they've been captured. Oh. Then they get slung over beast saddles by riders, and they all have to split because Han the White One will rise before morning, and the Drig will hunt by his light. It is not a precipitous time to meet them, for their numbers will be many. Oh, I wonder when this will come back into play. Well, in 2 pages. Chapter 20, though, another welcome break from Jerry's adventures. Quite amusing. I think we should read this, Miles.
In the name of the great judge woman, be silent.
Levarka thumped the table with the flat of his hand, making the dishes rattle. Particles of food sprayed from his lips. The small blonde woman seated at the far side of the room shook her head wearily, as if observing a familiar scene. Her reply, delivered in a low, monotonous whine, had the mechanical quality of a statement made many times before. Anger will not change the truth, husband. Our youngest daughter is gone, driven away by your cruelty. Now we have lost both of our children. Without someone to carry on the duties of the Varka, what will become of us? We are nothing. Nothing. The stocky man wiped crumbs from his beard violently.
Do you think I do not know that? That I, the voice of the great judge, whose ancestors have served the wall since Bayasev began, if you had given me sons instead of...
He broke off at the sound of running feet in the corridor outside. A loud knocking followed. The woman rose and slid aside the bronze-panelled doors, admitting a slim man in yellow tunic and trousers. Agitatedly, he bowed and then trotted to Levarka's side.
Well, Lal Magra, what is it, man? Speak, speak.
Speaker, there is something wrong at the wall. The great judge has given strange signals. We do not know what he required of us.
Ha! The elders may mumble and mutter that there is no place for a speaker whose wife cannot give him heirs, but who do they run to when in doubt?
The woman began to speak. He waved a dismissing hand at her.
Be silent, wife. This is a man's business. Come, Lal Magra.
Once in the corridor, the acolyte's agitation became something close to panic. At an angle of the passage, he paused and began to babble his story, but Levarka pushed him ahead, saying brusquely,
Whatever it is, it can wait until we reach the judgment hall. I take it that the elders still have tongues in their doddering heads.
It required a massive effort of will to keep his facade of confidence intact when he strode through the towering doorway of the judgment hall and confronted the scene within. Seated on the dais below the vast face of the great judge, the 6 elders of the Sev Kalan were submerged in a sea of sombre yellow light, the colour of imminent peril in the code of the wall. All of the signals had disappeared. The few members of the community still awake at this hour were huddled in a small dark group in the front pews. Levarka paced unhurriedly up the central aisle, ignoring their pallid, staring faces. 2 women sobbed, somewhere in the gloom. He mounted the steps to the dais.
What news have you?
He addressed the elders without formality, noting, not for the first time, that the marks of senility were among them, despite the fact that there was little difference in years between himself and the youngest of the 6. Surely a man's life had been longer when Bayasev was newly built. You speak discourteously, but we forgive your error, for the occasion is one to disturb the reason of the strongest of men. The speaker was Borod Bran, oldest member of the upper city tribe. The careful phrasing of his rebuke could not disguise the quaver in his voice. Slumped in his chair, he regarded Levarka with faded, watery eyes. We can tell you little, other than what you see for yourself. Less than 1/4 of an hour ago, the yellow signals began to cover the wall. We await your interpretation of the words of the great judge. Levarka nodded. Seated at the desk console, he fell easily into a routine that he had not practiced in several years, ever since his daughter had become keeper of the records. The information flowed from the vast storage banks of the wall, becoming comprehensible as the console transformed the symbols into the language of men. Slowly, Levarka's expression grew grim. Presently he rose and faced the silent assembly. What is the word of the great judge? Borod Bran's query tailed off into inaudibility.
The message is that within 2 nights and 2 days, Bayasev will be destroyed.
Oh, good lord. All the shit is hitting all the fans all of a sudden. So something's exploded in space that Jerry thinks is the hope of man. The wall, this weird computer in the city, thinks that the city will be destroyed in 2 days. Oh, what's going on? And Jerry and Le Pinu have been captured by weird anti-technology people. Poor people. That's who Miles.
Poor people.
Poor people. Anyway, it turns out Han the White is the moon that Bayer is the moon of. Maybe. I think. That's what we're going to assume, isn't it? But the Drig are nasty beasties that hunt the Mara, peaceful forest-dwelling simians, who break through the clearing that they're all in. And Jerry's captors are probably the best developed characters in the book outside of Jerry and Marek, because just for a few pages in a chapter, we get a real easy interplay between their leader, Charlem, and his hunter buddies and/or sons, Galdon and Seshril. And they actually seem like pretty chill blokes, all considered. And handy in a fight too, as they demonstrate in an encounter with the Drig. But back in Le Penou City, the council is still arguing, but our dad has figured out from the wall that a terrible object is headed for Bayer and the city will fall. So something's going to come from the sky. Is it an asteroid? What is it? Is it a crashing spaceship? We don't know. But back at Gandhi Spaceport, Field Marshal Hera and co. are observing the huge mass of people that's gathered at the perimeter. They have dance mania. They've got dance mania, Miles. And there's a journalist comments on what they're seeing, and it's funny in itself that the journalist is a Guardian Times journalist, because in this future, the Guardian and the Times of London have merged. But there's this nice little passage, and it says, "What in blazes is going on down there?" The man from the New York Herald Tribune squinted into the glare of an Indian sun as wind from the whirling rotors overhead whipped his words away. Below, the shadow of the big United Nations helicopter rippled over the myriad heads of the crowd, like a flat dark fish over pebbles. The scrape and shuffle of innumerable feet, the babble of 1,000 voices blended into a featureless ascending roar. From the starboard viewport, the red-bearded correspondent of the Swedish Aftonbladet said, wonderingly, "It looks like some kind of dance, but it's a pretty odd affair." An example of contagion by communication, the lanky London Guardian Times representative spoke with his usual air of casual omniscience. Watching the slow, mindless whirlpool of human figures half a mile outside the Gandhi Space launching site's electrified fence, he continued, "The 4 a.m. satellite relay brought scenes of dancing mania in southern China and Brazil. Our friends down there, lacking anything more constructive to do, no doubt were caught up by that craze and have imitated what they saw on their screens. That's our 21st century Earth, one big, cosy, electronic madhouse." So, 1969, Moorcock predicts 80s rave culture. It just arrived a little bit earlier than the 21st century. So it's getting desperate back on Earth, Miles. Unrepentant dancing.
Oh no.
The horror. The horror. Unrepenting mass dancing. Whatever next. But meanwhile, back in the boring part of the book, all the best stuff in this book is the first third, the stuff with Frank, and the stuff back on Earth as society breaks down and everybody turns into a massive rave while the world ends.
It's very clear that he talks about how an earlier version of the story was an earlier version of the Black Corridor.
Yeah.
Because that feels like the most thematic with like just the breakdown of society, except here it's like a big dance party. Yeah,
exactly. This all feels very much of a piece with The Winds of Limbo, Shores of Death, Blood Red Game, Black Corridor. It's the Edgar Rice Burroughs inserts with Jerry on the planet that are the least interesting part of this. They're just like his Michael Caine Rice Burroughs pastiches, which are fine. You know, he does them well. He does them okay, but it's definitely the least interesting stuff. One of Jerry's captors, Sershal, whatever he was called, can't remember, the son of Chemail, the speaker of the, oh God, what are they called, the Alanga?
Yeah.
Oh, I need a Danish-style glossary for this. At least there are no weird units of measurement.
Nope.
But Jerry, he got injured by the Drig, this guy, anyway, and is unconscious. So Jerry says, "Take me back to my ride." They had a 6-wheel Mass Effect-style ride that they came out of their spaceship in. And he says, "I can get some techno drugs that will help him." They're all boo and grr, no way, man. We don't do technology, man. But they have cool birds now, birds as in squawking birds, which keep an eye on their village. And back at the village, he spots Kathy, but she's in a robe and spaced out and being weird. What gives, Miles? Cliffhanger. We'll find out in a couple of pages. But first, back at the city, we find out that the people of the lower city are using machines to pound their way into the upper city for reasons that we don't really understand, other than they're poor and sweaty and dirty and they want to get at the posh people. So, yeah, other than being grotty and smelly, they don't really seem to have any motivation, these people, do they? What are they going to do? Eat them? Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I'm sure it's thematic.
Yeah.
Except they're not, unlike back home on Earth where everyone's dancing on the way to oblivion.
Yeah.
I guess Rick, the people's poet, has risen up to get the kids to overthrow the man.
Yeah. Well, what the lower people of the city really needed was a Rick, the people's poet character to make it just write another fucking chapter or something, or just add a couple of paragraphs to the scene.
Give us a character so they aren't just the faceless hordes of the other.
That scene where they get attacked and they get knocked out and he gets rescued by the Alanga or whatever. just have a bit where Rick the People's Poet is leading the rabble, and give them some motivation or something. But anyway, they're trying to get into the upper city. The council are all hopped up on, but why isn't the wall telling us what to do like it normally does? This massive city computer, and they're blaming Lee Pinu's dad. So he just kills the annoying old one. Loses his patience, kills the fuck out of him, just as they get the news that the smelly ones are broken through. So they all run off, leaving him alone with the guy he's just killed and the console for him to work on the computer further. But we do find out what gives with Kathy. Turns out, not much. She's fine. She's absolutely fine. She's just been recovering.
She's been introduced to hippie culture and thus contaminated irredeemably.
Yeah. So they rescued her from the city smellies as well. Oh, Le Pinu's sister is there as well. Cool. And there's also a massive statue. And at the bottom, there's a bas-relief of a map of Asia. So it's like, right, we've got 8 pages left. Fuck it. Let's throw in some Chariot of the Gods shit. And the hope of man ain't blowed up at all. And Marek is some sort of hero, really.
Hooray.
Yeah, and it all rambles to an end as an asteroid destroys the city just as Le Pinu's old man finds out that the big computer on the wall was just fucking with them to see what happened because it was bored of them. Massive revelation at the end. The city computer is like, why have you done this to a city computer? Why have you done this to this massive wall? And the computer's like, well, I just wanted to see what happened.
I'm so depressed.
Exactly. Yeah.
Why have you done this? Honestly, fuck you guys.
Yeah. Honestly, because I could, and I don't give a rat's ass about any of you, and I wanted to see what would happen.
It's really great that in this the science fiction adventure novel that our hero does anything at all.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
true.
at least Erlich Scarsol is trying to push forward with his torrid romances.
Yeah.
Or Clovis Marquis looking for the great evil, the super scientist who will turn the earth. Meanwhile, Jerry is just hanging about, just doing some shit.
He's hanging around, watching everybody else take care of business and worrying about his wife. But he does find his wife, and it's all great. And Le Pinu, just has some mild thoughts of jealousy, but it's fine. They get on. She gets on with Kathy via translation. It's what we didn't say earlier on, of course, is they put Jerry on a learning computer so he could understand their language and speak it, whereas Kathy never had that. The other thing we find out is that there's a statue. There's a bas-relief of Asia on the base of the statue. Oh my God, what could this possibly mean? And meanwhile, Le Pinu's dad, before the city gets absolutely wiped out and everything falls on his head by an asteroid or something, he finds out that the computer tells him that the spaceship that just arrived was the second spaceship to come to this world. And the idea is they were all descended from the crew of the first that arrived millennia ago from Earth, from Asia. So that's the other bone that Mike throws the Indian readers. You once had a space-going culture back in the day, a Hindu space-going culture, and you went to the stars 4 millennia ago, and these people are the descendants. Yeah, it's just something to throw in the last few pages. And back at Gandhi Spacefield, everything's fucked, but hope comes when they receive a signal that the expedition's returned. And Marek's legacy, because poor Marek dies, and they find out that Marek did try and kill and blow himself up with the ship. But just before the warp engine engaged, a huge meteorite or asteroid or whatever hit the ship's shields, partially disintegrated, knocked them off course, and then that deflected it by some fucking miracle of mathematics into a precise course for it to crash right on top of the city of the wall and the computer. What a weird coincidence.
And the computer's just like, yep, this is just how I planned everything.
The computer's like, oh, this is interesting. I'll let this play out. Yeah.
Computer is kind of the balance. The computer is the eternal champion because it is dictating law versus chaos. And it's just like, yeah, no.
Yeah, that's a good point. So Marek's legacy is that his experience and his death will allow scientists to develop new technology to help resist the horrors of the warp. So this is a Warhammer 40,000 prequel, stroke, Event Horizon antecedent, stroke, whatever we want to call it. But huzzah for everyone. Everything works out, except the people in the city who got destroyed by an asteroid, and the million who died in New York when everything was hitting the fan, and that monkey cub that got its head crunched by the Drig in the one really violent incident in this entire book. And some other people, probably. And that's where it ends. That was The Distant Sons. That was a bit of a shocker, that, actually, when the Drig are chasing those simian creatures, the people of the forest, the Elang call them. And you just get one reference to the teeth of a Drig crushing the skull of a cub.
Okay, chapter 29. Does it kind of imply that everyone on the planet is going to die off from radiation sickness? So it's okay for mankind to just sort of... Because look, go to page 168.
Yeah. Oh, nice picture of... Oh, Jerry's got a tash.
I'm assuming that's the ancient empire.
Oh, maybe so. Yeah, it looks like Paul Morrow from Space 1999. So, yes, a shadow crossed Kathy's face. If my observations are correct, the Yalanga and the Sev Kalan were doomed from the beginning in a more insidious way. A war with unknown weapons fought in some lost era of Asian history, a voyage across 4 light years in a spaceship travelling at sublight velocities, who knows? Exposure to radiation at any rate, whether man-induced or present in space, setting up a slow decay, a long sickness. Jerry put one arm about her shoulders. Come on, honey, let's go before we both break down. We're leaving one person, at least, happier than before. Kathy smiled. That's true. I have a feeling that the next ship reaching Bayer will be met by the new Mrs. Seshral. So, yeah, wounded Seshral appears to have tapped off with Lei Pinu, or her sister, I can't remember. Radiation has been fucking them up for millennia. That was The Distant Sons.
Yeah. It's kind of like, very much like the very first Doctor Who serial, with like the Daleks in the city and the Files.
Yeah.
All kind of blonde and perfect outside.
Oh, yeah. I never thought of that.
Which is basically a take on...
Dalek City didn't have, like, weird... Oh, no, wait. In Genesis of the Daleks, there are mutants underneath the Khaled City.
There are mutants in the lakes which the Daleks pump for water.
It's just a giant mutated clam.
Yes. No, that's Genesis of the Daleks, a giant mutated clam. There was some kind of tentacle thing in the water, which I think you see in the movie, and you get a swirling whirlpool effect for the TV serial. But but then again, the first Dalek serial is almost the time machine with the numbers filed off.
This is true. And Genesis of the Daleks, you have is it mutos?
Yes.
You have mutos in the old war-ravaged wasteland, and giant mutant clam in a giant fiberglass mutant clam in the sewers below the Khaled City. Yeah. Oh well, what do you think of The Distant Sons?
It's it's not the usual. As much as I like a bit of pulp, I never kind of go for like the pulp sci-fi, because I don't know. I enjoy some Asimov. I have a love-hate relationship with Heinlein. If only because I find Heinlein utterly unreadable, because his style of writing just seems stuck in a perennially 1950s Americana kind of way. And even when he's talking about like sex and religion and politics, it all still has that kind of 1950s golly gee, this is the stuff we're making fun of in Fallout kind of attitude to everything. And the guy can't write women for shit. I mean, but
Heinlein
then again,
was a strange case, wasn't it? Because it's like all this like half space suit will travel stuff and all that business is very like golly gee, we're on Mars. I mean, Starship Troopers, despite the political readings and everything else, is a fairly exciting war book. Yeah. But the only other ones I ever read by him were Stranger in a Strange Land and Number of the Beast, I think. But that's like 25 years ago, and I can barely remember them.
And like, yeah, it's good fun. It's not what I'm normally going to go for, because if I want to read a Moorcock, like one of his SF ones, I'm probably going to go for like The Fire Clown or The Shores of Death.
Yeah, this one definitely suffers for being. I mean, it's a serial at the end of the day. It's a pulp serial, and he can't resist putting interesting sci-fi ideas in there.
It's a pulp serial clearly for kids.
Yeah.
So it just, it just has that very sort of episodic. And I do have to wonder how much of it is James Cawthorn and how much is Mike.
Yeah, I've no idea. But you know what? I have read this before, probably 20 years ago, and I didn't really remember anything about it. It can't have made much of an impression on me. I must have just tossed it off and finished it just to finish it. But just like all the other 60s Mike SF that we've read, and I think we've done them all now. We've done The Blood Red Game, We've done Shores of Death. We've done the Black Corridor. We've done the
Rituals
Ice Schooner.
Infinity.
We've done Rituals Infinity. We've done this. I think we've pretty much rattled through most of his 60s books full stop, with the obvious exceptions like some of the Elric stories. And, I mean, we've talked about Behold the Man, but we've not covered it as such.
I mean, the only kind of one I can think of is the Golden Barge, but that's definitely more in kind of a fantasy.
Yeah, okay, we haven't done the Golden Badge or Sojourn.
Yeah.
And probably what we'd do is toss them off as a single episode, because there were things that he wrote and they were never published in the 60s. He only published them because someone said, have you got anything else we can publish? And it was like, oh, let me have a rake around in the attic and see what I can find. He said, oh, I've got these. That'll make some more dosh, so I can pay some writers and some artists for New World. So yeah, we'll probably do, I don't know. We'll do them at some point. But yeah, I think we've just about done all of his 60s stuff. And my main reflection, particularly on the sci-fi stuff, so the things that are collected in the more generic SF collections by Millennium, I've enjoyed them a lot more than I expected. And I've taken a lot more out of them than I did when I read them at the time.
I feel like most of his kind of that period of SF feels very reminiscent of early Philip K. Dick. So like when he's doing a lot more space opera kind of vogue before he goes more into the psychedelic and reality warping stuff.
Yeah, it's not as good though.
No.
It's not as good as Philip K. Dick. It's not as good as Robert Sheckley.
No.
I think he does interesting things with the form and with the genre, but I don't think it's his comfort zone.
You can tell like he's not a big fan of SF or kind of like space opera style SF as a kind of medium. Because even like coming out of Terraphiles, you can still sort of blink and wink away the more SF elements going more into the second ether.
Yeah. I mean, the weird thing about this one is even though it's 50-50 split with hard SF and Edgar Rice Burroughs pastiche, is that his hard SF stuff is actually pretty good and pretty focused in terms of thinking about the technology of things. You know, it's certainly not hand-wavy. He's put a little bit more effort into some of this stuff. But when you compare it just to some of the things that he was writing, like the massive hard-on he's got for describing how an airship departs from an airship mast in The Warlord of the Air, or how one of the ice schooners prepares to set sail from a dock in the ice schooner. He really, really, really sinks himself into that stuff. This is a little bit more perfunctory, I think.
Yeah.
But that said, jettison the Jerry stuff, the Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff, and replace it with some Robert Sheckley style astronauts on a planet having a fucking mental time. This is a 10 times better book.
Yeah, because Jerry just doesn't really do anything. It's not as it's almost like he just rejects the idea of being any kind of Flash Gordon style hero. Yeah. It's just, I'm going to look for my wife and I'm just going to deal with all the crap that comes my way. And I don't know, how do you feel like it's very clear, like at midway through, that they're just doing it they're just trying to finishing this off out of some kind of contractual obligation? Because it starts strong and then sort of slowly deflates. And maybe that's due to like lack of feedback from the change of editors.
It's like a lot of his books written, you know, in 3 days or whatever they were written in the 1960s for money, for 150 quid or whatever it was. It was like, right, I'm kicking off. The first third is full of fantastic ideas that I'm not going to develop any further, but the really intriguing concepts and ideas like the warp and the horrors of the warp, which is absolutely terrific. But I'm not going to do anything with them because I'm at the point now where I've written a third of this, but I'm also writing something else for someone else, and I've got this short story over here to write. Jim, do you want to pick this up and run with some more of this stuff? And you just don't know. And then by the end, when in the last 8 pages, you get the entire denouement of almost random space asteroid striking City at precise time, precisely on target, exactly when the unresolved issue of who the lower city people are. Well, let's just have them attack the upper city precisely when, you know, all these other things are happening. Oh, and actually, this is actually a 4 millennia-old Asian space colony.
And then there's the idea that, okay, so we've found this distant planet. Everything's fine. Yeah. Not take into account that we're going to have to build all these ships, get all the people onto them, and who knows how long it's going to take us to migrate over and replace the native population greatly.
Well, I'm guessing probably the next stage of this is all of the wealthy technologists.
Yeah.
refit the Hope of Man to carry passengers,
and
some neutron bombs.
the 12 richest people and their mistresses.
Yeah,
and they're the ones who get to go over.
Yeah, undoubtedly. The great unwashed who just can't stop dancing, they've got no fucking chance, have they? Got no chance.
No chance. And then of course, it'll be like the end of Atlas Shrugged, where like all the great technologists go and build their utopian city, but it's just like, it collapses when someone refuses to do the washing up. Or they're going to get wiped out by a disease contracted from a particularly dirty telephone.
Well, let's hope so. Hey? Let's hope so. That was The Distant Suns.
What do you mean you've never been to Alpha Centauri? Oh, for heaven's sake, mankind.
One of the interesting things about being in the civil service is that this is not anybody who listens who's in the civil service. I'm not knocking the civil service. There's lots of lovely people who work there, but there are certain aspects to it that being like a working class northerner working in the civil service that sometimes make one shake one's head. So I remember I went to I think it was an all-day workshop, and the person who decided to introduce the icebreaker exercise was, let's go around and everybody say what their favourite journey has been in their life.
Oh no.
Yes. So, you know exactly what's coming. So there's the people talking about their trips to Machu Picchu and all this business going around, and I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, fucking hell, what this is so lame. This is such a lame icebreaker. I'm surrounded by all of these really middle-class civil servants talking about their £8,000 holidays being their favourite journeys and almost getting to a point where they were competing with each other. And it came to me and I said, probably my favourite journey is when I was at a night out in London and I missed the last tube, so I got on a night bus and fell asleep and ended up in High Wycombe, or not High Wycombe, you know what I mean. Intending it to be like sort of a semi-joke, because, I'm not going to say the favourite journey I ever made was I took speed before I flew to Prague in the Czech Republic, because I had some speed in my wallet and I bottled it about taking it on the plane with me. So I stuck it in a bottle of Coke and drank it in the bogs before I got on the plane. And that was the best 90-minute journey of my life. Not going to say that, am I? Not going to say that. So I just told an anecdote about being absolutely arseholed on a bus. And even then, it wasn't my anecdote. It was my mate Rich's anecdote. I just thought it was funny, so I thought I'd tell that. So I was lying as well. And they all just stared at me like I'd fallen out of a fucking tree. And they're right, who's next? Right, who's next?
I have a similar anecdote from when I worked in a hotel. I had to take a liquor licensing course, and it was a day course. And it was all a round table. They asked us what our favorite drink was.
Yeah.
And everyone else was all like, oh, I like a tequila sunrise because, like me, it's bright and sunny. And it got to me, I'm like, I like black coffee because it's dark and bitter. Moving on.
Who's next?
Who's next?
Everybody looks vaguely uncomfortable.
Here's the one who has the attitude problem.
Yeah. They all looked at me like I was from the lower city and that I smelled of shit before they moved on. And someone else started talking about the Canary Islands or something.
I mean, you should have gone with the speed anecdote.
I should have, really, on reflection.
At worst, some yuppie would probably come up to you later and go, you want to do some blow in the men's room?
Yeah. See, that'd be all right, but then I'd have to say, sorry, I don't do it anymore. That'd be really bitterly disappointing, wouldn't it? Yeah. Sorry, I haven't done it for 25 years. I'm now a prude. Yeah. Yeah, anyway. Well, that was The Distant Suns. Thanks as ever, Miles, for coming back and beating around several bushes.
No problem.
And no doubt we will think of something to do again at some point in the future.
Okay, on the subject of weird space movies about people travelling to strange and distant planets.
Oh.
Planet of the Vampires.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what else I've got. And
what?
The only problem we've got with that is, so the Zulawski guy who did Possession, right? Yep. I've got a box set of 3 of his films on Blu-ray. And one of them is about a voyage to another planet.
Okay.
And the Polish government shut his production down and said, there's no fucking way you're completing this. It was only 80% complete, and ordered all copies of it destroyed. And then, as it happens, a copy of it turned up and was shown at the Cannes Film Festival. a few years ago to great success. So I've got that on a Blu-ray. I'm going to have to watch that at some point. The first film in it is about a guy during a Polish-Prussian war or something whose entire family gets murdered, including his wife, and then he comes across a doppelganger of his wife. So obviously he was into his doppelganger thing.
Sounds vaguely like Solaris.
It's a bit Solaris, a bit Possession, because Possession is about doppelgangers as well.
Yep.
Possession ends a lot like The Distant Sons. Weirdly enough.
I don't know. It's like which film am I gonna ever get around to finishing Possession or rewatch the Russian Solaris?
Yeah. Funny enough, reactions. We will finish in a moment, surely. But you know what? People listen to this podcast when we're close to 2 hours in. I'm sure of the people who stick with us to the end, so we might as well just carry on, aren't we? Phil watched Possession with me. She'd never seen it before. And I hadn't seen it in over 20 years. So I don't know if I was under the influence of something when I watched it originally because it freaked me out. I found it really intense. But watching it again with Phil next to me, watching it with a combination of bemusement and amusement, it was a completely different experience. And you watch it now in the knowledge that Isabella Gianni had serious trauma issues after making it. Unsurprisingly.
Yeah. It is uncomfortably intense.
Yeah, it really is. And her performance in it is shattering, right? But she deserved a much better performance from who she was playing off. Because Sam Neill is kind of terrible in it. And I really like Sam Neill. But he does look out of his depth. He looks like an amateur dramatics guy out of his depth improvising. And everything must have been done in one take.
Yeah.
Because some of his takes are staggeringly bad.
It's just like the scene when he's in the hotel just having a drinking binge and he's just kind of sitting shaking. And again, I like Sam Neill, R.I.P. Yeah. I'm sure you've heard the anecdote of Event Horizon where all the members of the crew have like their nationality on their flag, on their uniform, and how he wanted the one for Australia changed to have the British flag replaced with the Aborigine flag.
Yeah.
Because he felt like in the future they'd have fully thrown off the shackles of British colonization.
I mean, Sam Neill, just fucking top bloke, obviously. Yeah. Top bloke and a very good actor. But I don't think he knew what the fuck he was doing in Possession. And I'm not really surprised,
No, it's...
The guy who plays Heinrich, fucking hell, absolutely amazing. All of his weird contorting kung fu poses.
Now, if Heinrich had been played by Udo Kier, my God, what a movie.
Yeah, I'll watch Udo Kier in anything. There was a really, really lovely Udo Kier film. I think it was the last film he did before he died, about an old gay man living in a nursing home who escapes from the nursing home to kind of connect with people for the last... I can't remember what it's called. Look up Udo Kier's last film. I always just terrific.
Think of like My Own Private Idaho.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing film. And he's just in for 2 scenes. Yeah. And he just steals the film.
Yeah. I really like him in Johnny Mnemonic as well. He always understood the assignment, Udo Kier. Always understood the assignment. Swan Song is the one I'm thinking of from 2021. Absolutely terrific. But since Swan Song, he was in My Neighbor Adolf, Skeletons in the Closet, By Design, Bad Painter, The Secret Agent, and there's one coming out this year, which is his last performance, and it's posthumously released. So there you go. I thought it was his last film, but my God, that guy worked. And one of the funniest films I've ever seen was one my mate recommended to me years and years and years ago. And it's an African-American urban Dracula film. And Udo Kier plays Van Helsing.
Oh my God.
And it's full of hip-hop. And you know what? It's fucking hilarious. It's so good. And Udo Kier, once again, he understands the assignment. And he gives it everything in that film. Yeah, brilliant.
I'm just looking through his very eclectic filmography, because then you have stuff like My Own Private Idaho, and then right after that it's like The German Chainsaw Massacre.
You've seen Flesh for Frankenstein and Blood for Dracula.
I've not seen either of the Warhol horror films.
Yeah, you know what? They're so entertaining. They're ridiculously entertaining. And again, he just understands the assignment. He understands the assignment. There's one of his greatest lines. I think it's in Blood for Dracula. Or no, it might be Flesh for Frankenstein. No, it's Flesh for Frankenstein. He has his Igor guy, but he's called Otto in that. And he says, to understand life, Otto, first you must fuck it in the gallbladder.
Oh my God.
Absolutely amazing.
He was in a Scooby-Doo cartoon.
No way.
Yeah, he was in Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, where he plays an evil talking parrot.
Nice.
And it's actually a very good Scooby-Doo it's a very good Scooby-Doo cartoon. It goes very Lovecraftian throughout. It's Scooby-Doo Mysteries Incorporated. Normally each episode is very kind of postmodern. It's doing your traditional Scooby-Doo kind of mystery.
Yeah.
But there's this very sort of like cosmic horror backstory subplot going on throughout the 2 seasons. There is an episode which is basically where the Scooby Gang get trapped in a Saw film where the kids are in legitimate danger. And then the last couple of episodes is the Scooby Gang versus Cthulhu.
Really?
And
wow.
I am underselling it, but it is amazing.
I'll have to give that a look. But I think for now, we're gonna knock off. I'm gonna go downstairs and I'm gonna make Phil watch the black and white version of Johnny Mnemonic. I think that's gonna be our Sunday evening.
That sounds fun. I've never seen Johnny Mnemonic.
Johnny Mnemonic. I remember seeing it at the time, having come off the back of reading things like Neuromancer and Burning Chrome, and being mildly disappointed with it. But the more I rewatch it, the more I enjoy it, and I think it's actually a really great film. And it's a little bit kitsch, and of course you got Udo Kier in it as well. Yeah, so that always helps. Takeshi Kitano as a Yakuza leader, which that's value for money, and Dolph Lundgren as a cybernetically enhanced mercenary hitman who dresses like Jesus.
Okay, I'm sold.
What on earth could possibly go wrong with this?
I mean, it's the only reason I want to watch Free Jack is to see Mick Jagger basically play Boba Fett.
You know what? Did you listen to the episode we did on Free Jack?
I don't think I have yet.
Yeah. Did it with Tone Milazzo, Immortality Incorporated, and we watched Free Jack and talked about Free Jack. It's worth a look. But expect to be disappointed by everything other than Mick Jagger. Because Mick Jagger, to be fair, understands the assignment in that film and does his best with what he's got in front of him. It's the best thing about the film. The rest of the film is fucking terrible. Yeah.
I know what to do. I was in performance, goddammit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Some of his line deliveries. Weird. But, not the most interesting thing about the movie by far. And when you do watch it, prepare yourself for the size of his helmet. he wears a comically oversized helmet at times, that he almost Darth helmet style.
Not every musician can be a David Bowie and transition perfectly into acting.
No, this is true. Right, let's knock it on the head.
All right.
Cheers, Miles. Pleasure as always.
Yep.
Many thanks to Miles, as always, for taking the time to drop by and talk about The Distant Suns. You can find Miles and Charlie's Casual Trek podcast on all the usual podcatchers, and I'll pop a link in the show notes. As mentioned in our conversation, you can get the excellent books James Cawthorn, The Man and His Art, and Stormbringer Sessions, Sketches for a Graphic Novel, from John Davey's Jade Design webshop. We'll be back soon and headed into our Halloween period, so there'll be a couple of spooky, or just maybe plain unpleasant and sleazy 1970s books on our slate. But in the meantime, thanks as ever to our glorious patrons. First, those without tier, Anthony Piconti, Tim Cardos, Dave Dempster and Sebastian Weetabix, and our Chaos Engineers Andrew Clark, Andrew Cicluna, Andrew Spong, Anthony Porter, Benjamin Fletcher, Ben Hagar, Brandon Mays, Dan Charnley, Dave F., Dave Griffiths, Dave Voxman, Gabriel Laycock, Harvey Faulkner-Aston, Jim Kirkland, Jim Jupp, John W. Lays, Jules Lawrence, Matt Salks, Michael Hopwood, Neil McGurk, Paul McRandall, PJ Cooper, Rex Osseous Nusquam, Roger McCarthy, Scott Butler, Simon Perrins, Stephen Sowerby, Steve Braun and Steve Luke. And thanks to our crafty jugaderos Ed von Stort, Adrian Tchaikovsky, Alexander Harris, Andrew Van Ness, Kathy Rhubarb, Chris Sharp, Christian Hundal, Emily Thompson, James Connell, Graham Holden, Jake Patton, James Knight, Kevin Williams, Liam Turner, Lorne Hugo, Laws, Mark Buckley, Mark Hewlett, Mark Taylor, Matthew Broom, Murray Palmer, Nick Hopkinson, Arthur Ziv, Ritsby Skits, Sean Twist, Toby White and Taylor Lavery. An eternal thanks to our patron demons, Action Edmonds, Alistair Davison, Andy Darby, Brian Henderson, David Lee, Derek Clunan, Fred Quiche, Gareth Wilson, Glenn Sawyer, Greg Faulkner, Gwen Barlow, Ian Stead, Jenny Stim, Jason Vogel, Jem Gilbert, Joachim Sund, Joe Monty, Johan Hiapa, Jonathan Sharp, Lee Gary, Liam Jones, Marius Latauskas, Mark Hebden, Miles Reed-Labato, Neil Burton, Paul Hillary, Randall Gatlin, Steve Round, Tom Murphy, Ton Malazzo, the OG patron, Norman Beresford, and last but never least, Robert McMillan. Okay, enough of my blather. You can follow us on Instagram or Blue Sky with the handle @BreakfastRuins. You can email us at breakfastruins@outlook.com. The webpage is breakfastintheruins.com. We have our Patreon page too, and there are a few extra odds and sods on there. But until next time, wherever you are in the world, take care, stay safe, and we will meet again soon on the Moonbeam Roads.